The explosions had stopped an hour ago, leaving only smoke and silence. Kane Martinez crouched behind a shattered barricade, counting his remaining ammunition. 17 magazines, 4 grenades, 1 anti-tank mine. His entire platoon lay dead in the valley below, ambushed by the Krythian advance force. The pass behind him led directly to the colonial settlements. 3 million people with no defenses and no time to evacuate. His radio crackled with the evacuation order. He switched it off. If he left, those people would die before dawn. The ground trembled as the main Krythian force approached. Kane steadied his breathing and checked his rifle. Through his scope he saw them, thousands of armored warriors flowing up the mountain road like a metallic tide. Above them the massive command ship hung in the sky, its shadow stretching across the valley. Inside that ship he knew was Empress Vaelora herself. The Krythians always led from the front. Kane smiled grimly. At least he'd die fighting someone who understood war. He fired his first shot, and the battle began. The lead Krythian dropped instantly. Kane shifted position before the return fire obliterated his cover, already moving to his second prepared location. He'd spent the last hour rigging every advantage he could. Tripwires, explosive charges, choke points. The pass was narrow enough that their numbers meant nothing. They'd have to come at him in waves, and he'd make every wave pay. The first assault group charged forward with typical Krythian aggression. Kane triggered the mine he'd planted at the first bend. The blast threw bodies into the air and blocked the road with rubble and wreckage. He fired methodically into the confusion, each shot finding a target. They retreated after losing 30 soldiers in as many seconds. Aboard the command ship, Empress Vaelora watched the tactical display with growing interest. One single human soldier had just repelled her vanguard. Her tactical officer reported the casualty count with barely concealed shock. She leaned forward, studying the thermal image of the lone defender repositioning through the rocks. "Send the second wave," she ordered. "But I want him alive. Any soldier who harms him answers to me personally." The Krythians attacked again, with more caution this time. Kane used their hesitation against them, firing from 3 different positions in quick succession, making them think he had support. He threw his first grenade into their formation and dove as return fire shredded the stones where he'd been standing. A fragment caught his shoulder, burning through his armor. He ignored it and kept moving. 2 hours passed, then 4, then 8. Kane's world narrowed to a brutal rhythm. Shoot, move, reload, survive. His body screamed for rest, but his mind remained sharp, calculating angles and distances with mechanical precision. He knew every rock in this pass, every shadow, every firing line. The Krythians owned the galaxy, but right now, this piece of ground belonged to him. Vaelora descended from her ship as the 12th hour began. She walked through her own casualties, studying the precision of each kill, the efficiency of each trap. Her officers had called this human lucky. She knew better. This wasn't luck. This was skill and determination forged into something extraordinary. She reached the forward position and activated her armor's external speakers. "Human defender," her voice echoed through the pass. "I am Empress Vaelora. You have fought with honor. Surrender now and join my empire. You will command legions. You will have wealth and status beyond measure. This offer expires in 60 seconds. Silence answered her. Then a single shot rang out, striking the ground 3 feet from her position. Not a miss. A message. Kane's voice came through the smoke, rough and defiant. "I've got people behind me who can't fight. Families, children, old folks who just want to live in peace. You want this pass, you'll have to go through me. And, lady, I've got plenty of ammunition left." Vaelora felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. In 300 years of conquest, no one had ever refused her offer. "You'll die here," she said. "Probably," Kane replied, "but not before I make you pay for every inch." The Empress stood motionless for a long moment. Then she turned to her commanders. "Full assault! Break him!" They came in overwhelming numbers using artillery and air support, tactics designed to crush resistance through sheer firepower. Kane triggered his last demolition charges, bringing down part of the mountainside and burying dozens of warriors under tons of rock. The explosion nearly killed him too. He felt ribs crack as the shockwave threw him against stone. He struggled to his feet, vision blurring, blood running into his eyes from a gash across his forehead. His left arm hung useless at his side. Picked up his rifle with his right hand and kept shooting. Vaelora watched through her command display as the human soldier refused to fall. He was wounded, outnumbered 10,000 to 1, fighting an enemy that had conquered 100 worlds, and still he fought, not with the mindless fury of a cornered animal, but with calculated determination. Every shot still found its mark. Every movement still showed tactical awareness. "Cease fire," she commanded suddenly. Her officers stared at her in confusion. "Empress, I said cease fire!" Her voice carried absolute authority. The guns fell silent. She walked forward again, alone this time, her armor retracting to show her face. She found Kane propped against a boulder, rifle aimed at her chest, finger on the trigger. He could barely stand, but his hands remained steady. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why not retreat? Why not save yourself?" Kane coughed, tasting blood. "Because someone has to stand. Because if good people always run, evil wins every time. Because those settlers down there deserve someone who won't abandon them." He managed a painful smile. "We're human. We don't know how to quit when it matters." Vaelora studied him for a long moment. Woo! She'd seen courage before. She'd seen fanaticism and stubbornness and pride. This was different. This was something deeper. Something her empire had lost millennia ago in its pursuit of power. "You're not fighting because you think you can win," she said slowly, understanding dawning. "You're fighting because it's right." "Now you're getting it," Kane said. The Empress made her decision. She turned to her assembled forces and raised her voice. "We withdraw immediately." All forces returned to the ships. Shocked protests erupted from her commanders. She silenced them with a gesture. "This human has shown me something I thought extinct in the galaxy. Honor without expectation of reward. Courage without hope of survival. Loyalty that transcends self-preservation." She looked back at Kane. "Humanity is too dangerous to conquer and too valuable to destroy. We will not make enemies of a species that produces warriors like this." Kane lowered his rifle slowly, not quite believing what he was hearing. Vaelora activated her communication array. "I am declaring a formal ceasefire and opening treaty negotiations with the human colonial government. This war is over." She turned back to Kane one final time. "You have won, human. Not just this battle, but the war. You've earned something no other species has earned from the Krythian Empire. Our respect." Kane slumped against the boulder as the adrenaline finally faded, pain crashing over him in waves. In the distance, he heard the sound of human dropships approaching, reinforcements finally arriving. Too late to help fight, but just in time to witness the impossible. One man had held a pass against an empire, and in doing so, he'd changed everything. As consciousness faded, Kane's last thought was simple. They were safe. The people in the valley were safe. He'd done his job. When he woke 3 days later in a hospital, the first thing they told him was that the Krythian Empire had signed a mutual defense pact with humanity. His stand had become legend, broadcast across both civilizations. He was being called the Guardian of the Pass, the soldier who fought an empress to a standstill. Kane didn't care about the titles or the fame. He cared that when he'd looked at impossible odds and certain death, he'd stood his ground anyway. He cared that millions of people were alive because one person refused to quit. That was enough. That would always be enough, because that's what humans did. When everything was on the line, when retreat was easy and standing was suicide, they stood anyway. Not because they were fearless, but because some things mattered more than fear. Empress Vaelora understood that now, and the galaxy would never be the same.